Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about Appalachian creepy legends. If you've ever wondered what makes the Appalachian region one of the most unsettling places in America, these tales will get you the answer. But before we begin, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. I'd been sent to this clinic in a little town called Elbridge for a community placement. It was part of my final rotation. There was a single gas station, one diner, and a hardware store that closed at 3 p.m. every day. On Sundays, it didn't open at all. The place was quiet in that heavy, smothering way, not peaceful, just slow, like it had stopped evolving years ago. Everything from the wallpaper at the clinic to the church flyers posted on lampposts looked stuck in 1994. You couldn't even get a decent signal unless you stood on the back porch of the clinic and held your phone above your head, like some kind of tech sacrifice to the mountain gods. The people weren't unfriendly, just hard to read. They watched you too long, took their time answering questions. I could never tell if they liked me or just tolerated me because they had to. My supervisor said I was doing well under pressure. Most days, though, I just felt hollow and heavy. I'd finish my shift and sit in my little rented cabin, listening to the fridge hum, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. That weekend, my boyfriend Jonah flew up from Charleston. We'd been doing long distance for a while, but this was the first time he visited me in Elbridge. We were both looking forward to it, something normal, something grounding. When he arrived, I teared up hugging him. I brushed it off, said it was the mountain air messing with my allergies. On Saturday, we got in the car with no plan. The sun was already rising behind the hills, lighting up the edges of the trees. We let the radio find some scratchy folk station playing songs about trains and hard luck, and just drove. There was something comforting about winding through that maze of switchbacks and steep drops, like the car was the only thing moving while the rest of the world held its breath. We passed through maybe 3 towns, each one somehow even smaller than Elbridge. Around mid-morning, we rounded a sharp turn and saw it. A gravel pull-off we hadn't noticed before. It was barely wider than the road, half covered in weeds. The sign was nailed to an old fence post, warped and crooked, letters done by hand, Whitlow Grounds. Faded green paint, almost lost to time. We figured it was a park, or used to be. There wasn't any clear entrance, just a gap and a sagging wooden fence. No parking lot, no map, no trash cans. But there were people in the clearing beyond, a couple walking slowly under the trees, a woman jogging with a golden retriever, someone sitting cross-legged near a half-rotted bench. Strangely, there weren't any cars, no driveways, no footpaths leading in from anywhere else. Jonah raised his eyebrows at me. I shrugged. We pulled in. We sat on an uneven old bench with chipped green paint flaking off in our hands. It wasn't comfortable, but it felt like the right place to stop. I remember my knee bouncing, this restless, anxious twitch I couldn't turn off. Jonah noticed and placed his hand on my thigh, that quiet steadiness he always brought with him, like he was built to absorb stress. I started talking, though I didn't mean to. It spilled out, how heavy everything felt, how the trees seemed to close in at night, how sometimes I'd wake up and swear the cabin had rearranged itself slightly. I told him how isolating it was, how it felt like the mountains were watching me, really watching, not just in a poetic way. Then the tears came, slow at first, then hard to stop, not loud, just steady. Jonah tried to pull me in, but I shook my head. I didn't even know what I was crying for. Everything? Nothing? That's when I saw them. 2 men, maybe in their 30s, stepping out from the trees, not from a path. There wasn't a path. They came to the underbrush like it wasn't there, like they'd done it 1,000 times. They didn't speak, didn't wave, just walked straight for us. One crouched right in front of me. His face was sunburnt and flaking, nails black with grime. The other stood behind Jonah, arms crossed tight against his chest, barefoot on the pine needles. His hoodie was thin and stained, zipped halfway up even though it was already warm. The crouching one looked at me, not at my face but at my hands. "Heard tell you're not from around here," the one in the hoodie said. I tried to sound casual. "Just visiting," I said. My voice cracked on the second word. The crouching one nodded, like that made sense somehow. Then he leaned in, just a little. His voice was low, so low I had to lean forward to hear. "You heard of the Morning Man?" I blinked. "What?" He didn't repeat it, just kept going like I had. "He comes around when people cry where they shouldn't, leaves something in your place. Most folks don't notice what's gone till it's already too late." There was no emotion in his voice. He could have been reading a weather report. I looked at Jonah. He wasn't smiling anymore. "He likes things that feel sad," the man added, glancing at the bench, then back to me. Something in my stomach turned cold, heavy, like swallowing a stone. I grabbed Jonah's hand. "We're going." We stood slowly, trying not to spook them, moved past them without a word. Neither man reached out, but both watched us all the way back to the car. Just as I opened the driver's side door, I heard it. Soft, almost a whisper. "He's already here." We didn't respond. The car doors shut louder than I meant them to. Jonah didn't turn on the radio. We didn't speak. We just kept driving until the trees felt farther apart and the road stopped winding like it was trying to trap us. 10 minutes later, he looked over. "Did you bring your keychain?" I always carried a little silver compass, a gift from Jonah. Our initials were etched into the back. I reached into my pocket. Empty. Checked my purse. Nothing. Gone. Not just missing, but gone, like it had never existed. Back at the cabin, we tried to pretend it was fine. We made pasta, watched half an old movie on my laptop, but neither of us was really in it. The silence felt too loud. That night, I woke to a tapping sound. Just one tap, maybe two. I stared at the window for what felt like an hour, too afraid to move. The darkness outside felt thicker than usual. I didn't open the blinds. The next morning, Jonah was going through his messenger bag when he stopped suddenly. My recorder's gone. He always kept it with him. It had his dad's voice on it, saved from old tapes and messages. That little leather recorder was like a part of him. We looked everywhere. His bag, my bag, the car, under the furniture. Gone, no trace, no explanation. That was the last time I cried that weekend. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because it felt like the sadness had been harvested, taken away and locked somewhere I couldn't reach. On my final day in Elbridge, I drove by Whitlow Grounds one last time, or at least where it had been. The sign was gone. So was the fence. The gravel lot had disappeared beneath dirt and weeds. The clearing was overgrown. The bench had collapsed, covered in vines. No joggers. No woman with a dog. No barefoot men watching from the trees. Back at the clinic, I asked around. No one knew the name. And that was it. I left Elbridge. I was 32 when I went too far past the old trails that wind behind Briar Ridge. I grew up maybe an hour east, in a town most people wouldn't notice even if they drove straight through it. So those hills, that brush-thick terrain, never felt strange to me. My uncle used to say the mountains weren't the problem. It was what remembered you inside them that mattered. That was the kind of thing he'd say after a couple of beers, leaning back in his lawn chair, looking out toward the tree line like it owed him something. I always figured it was just local color, folklore, the kind of stuff you hear around bonfires when the stories stretch long and nobody's checking the time. I needed a break. Life was crowding in on me from all sides. I was behind on rent again, ignoring voicemails I didn't want to deal with, and working too many hours at the feed store just to scrape by. My brain felt like a drawer full of tangled wires. I wanted quiet, not the kind you get from turning off your phone, but real quiet. Woods quiet, so I took a few days off, told my boss I had family stuff, which wasn't a lie exactly. I packed the essentials, blanket roll, 2 days of food, a little camp stove, my old boots, and my dad's compass. That compass was heavy in my hand, brass casing scuffed from years of use. He used to carry it like it was part of his body, said it never let him down. I drove up early and parked off the gravel service road, where the tree line swallows the last hint of civilization. My plan was simple. Follow a trail I'd hiked plenty of times. Set up camp on the ridge. Spend the weekend off-grid. Just me, the trees. Maybe a paperback I wouldn't finish. No texts. No sirens. No bills. No bills. I didn't want to be found, and out there, that was easy to pull off. That first night was quiet, just how I'd hoped. I pitched my tent facing the trees with a little drop-off behind me. Nothing dramatic, just enough to see through the trunks as the light drained from the sky. The evening noises drifted in wind in the brush, a few coyote yips, and one owl that wouldn't quit. That owl got under my skin. It wasn't that it was loud, it was too consistent. The call looped perfectly, same tone, same rhythm. No variation, no hesitation, copy, paste, repeat. That's not how owls sound, not really. Still, I kept the fire low, crawled into my bag, and told myself it was just nerves. Next morning, I made instant coffee that tasted like hot tree bark, then headed deeper along the trail. Around mid-morning, I saw a path I didn't recognize. narrow, choked with thorn vine and underbrush, curving left at an angle that didn't make sense. Not fresh game trail. The ground was worn but old, like something had used it often, then stopped. I should have ignored it, should have kept walking. Instead, I veered left. Didn't even bother making excuses. I just told myself it was harmless exploring. That was the lie I leaned into. The deeper I walked, the stranger it got. The trail sloped into a hollow, and the air grew thicker as soon as I stepped down. Not colder, just heavy, and it swallowed sound. Birds cut off behind me. No bugs, no breeze, just hushed pressure. I lifted my boot, set it down, and heard nothing. No crunch, no scuff. The world turned soft and still. That's when I noticed the crooked birch, the one with the branch shaped like an arm. I passed it once on my left, then again on my right. Then straight in front of me, though I hadn't turned. My stomach dropped. I spun in place. The trail behind me was gone, not overgrown gone. No trampled grass, no broken twigs. Just unbroken forest, solid and still. I dropped my pack, pulled my knife, and carved a mark into the nearest tree. An arrow pointing the way forward. A little control. I walked 20 yards in a loop and came back. No mark, not faded, not scratched, just never there. That's when my skin started buzzing. Not fear, not yet. More like static under the surface. Everything looked too aligned, too deliberate. I wasn't just lost, I was enclosed. Trapped in a loop that didn't belong to nature. I sat on a flat rock, fists twitching, trying to calm myself. Told myself I was tired, hungry, just spooked. Then I looked up, my pack was gone. I stood, turned in a circle. Nothing had changed, except that. No rustle, no footprints, no impression in the grass. It had never existed. That night I stayed under a tree, wrapped in my blanket, back against the trunk. I didn't close my eyes. Sometime past midnight, something moved, fast, low, at the edge of my vision, just outside the tree line. I whispered, "Hello?" before I could stop myself. It stepped out, and it was me. Same build, same jacket, ripped at the left elbow, same jeans, same old cap, the one I left in the tent flap the night before. It stood still, arms limp, head lowered, watching. Then it tilted its head, not mimicking, studying. And then it ran, not like a person, like a video skipping frames. It vanished. I didn't sleep, didn't even try. I shook until morning. At first light I moved, didn't think, didn't plan, just picked a direction and walked hard. Crashing through underbrush, ignoring the compass swinging uselessly at my hip. I aimed for the brightest light. East, maybe. Time blurred. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. Then I stepped into a clearing. A perfect circle. Too perfect. In the center, my pack, zipped, clean, water bottle full, sleeping bag neatly rolled. And on top, one stick of jerky. I hadn't packed jerky. I crouched at the edge, staring. No footprints. Not even mine. Only one set of tracks let in. Boots just like mine. My boots. I backed away. Didn't look back. It took the rest of the day, but I hit gravel at last. Almost cried when I saw it. I stumbled to the road and collapsed by a ditch. A guy in a four-wheeler came by a few minutes later. He stared at me for a long time before speaking. "You coming from Briar Ridge?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't say another word until we reached the park gate. As I stepped off, he leaned over his handlebars. "Whatever followed you out," he said, "don't bring it back." That was all. That night I burned the jerky behind my shed, poured bleach in the water bottle, sold the pack online. I haven't been back to those woods. I was 22 when I landed my third seasonal position with the National Park Service. Same region as before, out in western North Carolina, along the stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway that runs between Cherokee and Mount Mitchell. By that point, the job felt familiar, comfortable even. Most of the work wasn't glamorous. It was back-end stuff, maintenance mostly, repainting trail markers that had faded under a year of sun and rain, clearing out trees that storms had taken down like bowling pins, checking lean-tos and backwoods shelters to make sure they weren't already claimed by raccoons, or worse, before the colder months moved in. Nothing showy, not the kind of work tourists see, but I liked it that way. It was the kind of solitude that felt earned, steady. I'd been doing it long enough to recognize most of the crew by name. Roy, my supervisor, had become a kind of anchor. He'd been there longer than any of us and treated the place like a quiet kingdom. Friendly, sharp, no nonsense, the sort of guy who could fix a chainsaw with a pocket knife and a scowl. Everyone respected Roy. Anyway, I just gotten back from a weekend in Ohio. My cousin Megan had gotten married in Dayton. I was barely unpacked when Roy pulled me aside outside the ranger cabin. He leaned against the railing, arms crossed. "Some guy came by asking for you." I blinked. "What guy?" Roy shrugged. "Didn't say. Just walked up and asked if you were around. Looked about your age. Bit younger maybe. Real quiet type. Just stood there, looking at me like he was sizing me up." I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do with that information. Probably someone from back up the trail maybe saw me fixing that bridge last fall. Roy didn't push, just raised an eyebrow and nodded, like maybe. But then the guy came back, 3 days in a row. Never said anything different, never left a name, just stood around near the trailhead or hovered near the parking lot, always watching, always looking for me. Roy would give me the update each time, his tone getting flatter by the day. "Your friend's back, still not chatty." By the third time, I felt it, this cold, sinking sensation in my gut. That instinct your body has when something isn't right, even if your brain hasn't caught up yet. That little voice that says, "Don't brush this off." On the fourth day, I got assigned to the water rock knob section. It's usually a mellow loop. Some signage work, maybe a couple trash pickups. I was headed back to the truck, coiling up some rope over my shoulder, when I saw him. He was standing at the overlook, arms resting lightly on the railing, like he'd been there for hours. Thin frame, dark hoodie, posture loose but alert. Something about him didn't sit right. Not his build, not even his face really. It was the fact that he wasn't looking at the view, not even a glance. He was looking straight at me. "You Halden?" he asked, like he already knew the answer. I slowed down. "Yeah, who are you?" He smiled, just a small lopsided grin that looked rehearsed, like he thought that would be enough. Then he said, "Thought you could take me hiking. You know this place better than anyone, right?" I tried to stay calm, told him I was working, not a tour guide, not there to babysit strangers. But he didn't seem offended. He just followed me part of the way back to the truck, asking real casual, "Don't you want to make a new friend?" That night, I barely slept. Kept glancing out the tiny window in the ranger station every time the wind shifted, expecting to see that hoodie out there in the dark. Next morning, I got to the trailhead a little before 7. He was already there, didn't say anything, just nodded at me when I parked, then started walking behind me, same pace, same distance, like we were heading out together. I cut the route short, circled back through an old maintenance loop, made sure I lost him. But when I returned an hour later, still there, same spot, just waiting. After that, I changed everything. New trailheads, unmarked access roads, staff-only entrances, even swapped out my vehicle a couple times. It didn't matter, he was always already there. Then one day, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper, just a single line, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I'll wait as long as it takes." And then the text started. "Saw you yesterday. Is that your cousin with the badge? He doesn't need to come with us." I didn't recognize the number. It wasn't in any database, wasn't shared by the crew. I didn't even know how he'd gotten my contact. So I asked around, went crew member by crew member. No one admitted anything until Laura. She worked admin, knew her hire, mostly handled supply orders and schedules. She looked sheepish when I cornered her. "He said he grew up with you," she said, "that you guys were friends but had fallen out. And that was enough for you to give him my number." She hesitated. "He said your full name. Figured it checked out." That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. He'd studied me, watched, learned. Got my full name, my routines. I told Roy, "If he shows up again, I don't care how. Just get him out of here." Roy looked uncertain. "Are we sure he's not just a weird, lonely kid?" I just stared at him. Roy sighed. "Okay, I'll handle it." And for a little while, things went quiet. 2 weeks passed. No more notes, no more texts, no sightings. I started thinking maybe it was over. Then I showed up for a shift at the field cabin, and he was sitting at the table, wearing a ranger jacket, smiling like we were old college roommates. "This is Eli," Roy said. "New transfer, says he's from down the ridge." I couldn't move. My arms went numb. "That's him," I said. "That's the guy." Everyone froze. Eli just kept smiling. I talked to the foreman, laid everything out. He seemed genuinely surprised. He applied through standard channels. Background check came back fine. "I didn't know he knew you." "I'm not working with him," I said. "Period. We'll adjust the schedule. Keep you on different shifts." That was a lie. For the next 4 days, Eli was on every shift I was on. He never said another word, but he followed me everywhere, just far enough back on the trail that I could hear the crunch of his boots behind mine. At lunch, I'd sit inside the break cabin, and he'd be outside pacing, watching, never eating, never working. Every night came more messages. "Why won't you talk to me? You'll see, this place is ours." And still, at work, he never acknowledged me. Even Roy started noticing. "He hasn't done a damn thing all week," he muttered one afternoon. "Just trails after you like a ghost." Day 6, I woke up early and stepped out to get water. Eli was standing barefoot in the frost, arms out, palms up, like he was feeling something in the air. It was 36 degrees. That was the last straw. I marched to the foreman and said, "He's off. Something's wrong. He's not here to work." They let him go later that day. I never planned to be on that road after midnight. The trip wasn't supposed to take more than a couple of hours. Drop off a couch and a couple of chairs at my buddy's new place out near the foothills, grab something to eat, hang out for a bit, and then head back to the city before it got late. That was the plan. Simple. What I didn't plan on was losing track of time while we talked, or that storm rolling in out of nowhere just as I was wrestling the last chair into the back of my truck. By the time I shut his tailgate and climbed in, it was close to 11:30. The rain had turned those country roads into shiny black snakes winding through the hills. GPS was fine for the first stretch. Then the bars dropped, one, then another, until the screen froze completely. No signal, no service. I stared at that little spinning wheel like it owed me something. After a minute, I figured, whatever, I'll keep going west. Eventually, I'd hit the main highway. Except that's not how those back roads work. Out there, you take one wrong turn and the world folds in on itself. Everything starts looking the same. The deeper I went, the stranger the road felt. First, the painted lines disappeared. Then the shoulders. The trees leaned closer, like they were reclaiming the asphalt. Every so often, my headlights would catch a flicker, eyes reflecting, low to the ground. Deer maybe, or raccoons, or something else. Whatever they were, they bolted before I could get a good look, which honestly was fine by me. After about 20 minutes of winding through endless curves, I passed this old sign. It looked like it had been there since before cars were a thing. The wood was gray and splintered, like a bone left in the sun too long. The letters carved into it were almost gone, but I think it started with a D. Beneath the name, an arrow pointed straight down the road I was already on. I told myself that was good. It meant I was headed somewhere. But the truth? It didn't feel that way. There hadn't been a single house or gas station for miles, just black trees and cracked pavement disappearing into more black. And then I saw her. She was on the right side of the road, just past a sharp curve. My headlights hit her all at once, white dress hanging loose around her knees, bare feet planted in the wet asphalt. Her arms hung stiff at her sides, her head tilted so far to the left it didn't look possible. For a second, my brain tried to make sense of it, tried to tell me she was bending over or stretching or something normal, but it wasn't that. It was wrong. I let off the gas without even realizing it. The truck slowed, and for half a second I almost stopped. Almost. But then this feeling hit me. Heavy, like something deep in my chest whispering, "Don't." Not words, not a voice, just pure instinct, as old as breathing. So I kept going, eyes forward, hands locked on the wheel. But as I passed, I caught her in my peripheral vision, hair clinging to her face in wet ropes, skin pale under the glare of my headlights. She didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, head bent like she was listening for something under the asphalt. By the time I realized I was holding my breath, I was already past her. My hands were slick on the wheel, and I made the mistake of checking the rearview mirror. She was gone, the spot where she'd been, empty. I pressed the gas harder, muttering out loud like an idiot. Okay, probably nothing, probably fine. People walk roads sometimes, right? Hitchhikers, somebody whose car broke down. Sure, but barefoot? In the rain? Out here? At midnight? No. Just no. 2 miles later, my brights picked up another figure. Same white dress, same bare feet, same head tilted at that awful angle. I told myself it wasn't the same woman. Couldn't be. But the way the dress hung clinging like it was soaked through, it was identical. My jaw locked. This time, I didn't slow down. Didn't even let my eyes flick toward her. I just stared at the road, what was left of it, and drove. Hard. My chest felt like a vice. My breath came sharp and shallow, fogging up the windshield. Every nerve in my body screamed to look behind me, but I didn't. Not yet. When I finally did, there was nothing back there, just darkness that looked thicker than it should. Then, maybe 5 miles later, she was in the road, dead center, facing me. I hit the brakes so hard my seatbelt dug into my shoulder. Tires screamed across wet pavement, and the truck fishtailed before jerking to a stop just short of her. My wrists burned from gripping the wheel. The headlights cut through the rain and pinned her in perfect white light, and then she wasn't there, gone, like she'd never existed. No sound, no blur of movement, just empty road. I sat there for a full minute, engine idling, heart beating so hard it shook my arms. I thought about turning around, really thought about it, but the idea made my stomach twist in a way I can't explain. It felt worse than anything, like if I turned back, I'd never make it out, so I kept going. The road started climbing, curling higher into the hills. The trees pressed so close they might as well have been walls. Every bend folded in tighter, then light. I nearly cried when I saw it, a gas station, or what looked like one. Rusted pumps leaning like broken teeth, a single bulb glowing reek over the door. Civilization, a phone, someone who could tell me where the hell I was. I pulled in fast, gravel spitting under the tires, killed the engine. The pumps looked like they hadn't pumped anything since the Carter administration. The windows were so coated with grime, they might as well have been painted black. But the light was on. Someone had to be there. The rain had stopped without me noticing, but the air felt heavier somehow. Thick, like breathing under a wet blanket. I opened the door, and the hinges let out this low, tearing sound that made my teeth ache. Inside, it smelled like old paper and something sour, sharp, wrong. It wasn't a store, no shelves, no counter, just a long, narrow hallway stretching into shadow, with doors lining both sides. And at the far end of that hallway she stood, same white dress, same bare feet, same head tilted so far over it didn't look human. I didn't scream, didn't even think, just spun and bolted. I was in the truck before I knew I'd moved, hands shaking so hard I could barely get the key in. Gravel sprayed behind me as I tore out of there, pedal slammed to the floor, and I didn't let up for 2 hours. Not until the trees broke and the glow of a 4-lane highway rose like salvation. When I hit cell service again, I called my friend, told him everything in one breathless dump. He didn't laugh, didn't even sound surprised. "You saw her," he said quietly, "the lost wife. People around here know better than to drive that road after midnight." I didn't ask for details. I'd been visiting a friend in Virginia and decided to take the long way home. The plan was simple: avoid the boring interstate and drive through the mountains instead. My GPS showed this backroad route through the Appalachians that would shave off almost an hour less behind the wheel. Sold. It sounded better than endless highway stretches, and honestly, I like back roads. They feel quieter, less rushed. What I didn't really think about, stupidly, was how early it gets dark out there. Cities trick you into thinking sunset means something. Out in the mountains, the second the sun dips, it's pitch black. By the time I hit the foothills, it was gone. The road started folding in on itself, like someone had taken a ruler and snapped it. 2 narrow lanes, no streetlights, nothing but tree trunks pressing in from both sides, like they were trying to squeeze the road out of existence. I kept telling myself it was fine, just a road. People drive these all the time. All I had to do was follow the glowing blue line on my GPS, and I'd be out before I knew it. About 30 minutes in, I passed this diner. One of those brick boxes with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that looked like it hadn't worked since the 90s. It was the first sign of life I'd seen in a while, and I figured caffeine was a good idea. If I was going to keep winding through this forest, I needed it. The inside smelled like old coffee and fryer grease. 2 old guys sat in a booth by the window, barely looking up when I walked in. The guy behind the counter was heavy-set, apron-stained, arms resting on the formica like he was welded there. When I told him the route I was taking, his face twitched. Just a little, but I caught it. "You taking Hollow Ridge?" he asked. I glanced at my phone. That was the name on the screen. "Yeah." "Why?" He shook his head slowly, like I just told him I was going swimming with cinder blocks tied to my feet. "Don't take Hollow Ridge after dark." I let out a nervous laugh. "Honestly, what do you even say to that? Why not?" He looked at me for a long second. His eyes were flat, like he wasn't trying to scare me. He was just stating a fact. "Because you won't like what you find out there." Then he poured my coffee and walked away like the conversation was over. No explanation, no details. Just dropped that line and moved on like it was the weather. I should have turned around right then, but I didn't. I told myself he was just some local with a spooky story he liked to tell out-of-towners for kicks. So I left, got back in my car, and drove straight toward Hollow Ridge. At first, it looked like any other back road. Just a long strip of asphalt curling through the woods. The trees were so dense it felt like driving inside a tunnel carved out of blackness. My headlights barely reached beyond the next curve, and past that it was nothing but dark. No houses, no mailboxes, no reflector posts. I kept driving. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. That's when it hit me. I'd been making the same left curve, the same little dip, the same uphill climb over and over. Like someone had copied and pasted the same mile of road 100 times. I grabbed my phone. The GPS screen was frozen. No signal. Okay, fine. Not the end of the world. I had gas. I had a car that worked. All I had to do was keep driving, and eventually I'd hit something. A gas station, a town, anything. Then I saw the sign. It was nailed to a tree on the right side of the road. A crude wooden board with letters slapped on in messy white paint. Weselo down, they walk here. I laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. It was such a cliché horror movie thing to see. Probably kids messing with people dumb enough to wander this far out, except there weren't any houses, no lights in the distance, nothing. But I kept driving, because what else was I supposed to do? Turn around on a road barely wide enough for 2 cars and hope nothing came around the bend? No thanks. The first time I saw one, I thought they were just a stranded person, someone who needed help. They were standing in the middle of the lane, about 50 feet ahead. My headlights swept over them, and for a split second, I actually slowed down. Jeans, a faded hoodie. Then my brain caught up. The skin was wrong. It wasn't just pale. It was stretched too tight, like someone had pulled it across the bones and kept pulling even after it should have torn. No eyes, no nose, just a slit where the mouth should have been. Even that looked fake, like someone carved it with a dull knife. Then they tilted their head, slow, stiff, like a mannequin on a broken hinge. Every hair on my body stood on end, my chest locked up. I didn't think. I just slammed the car into reverse so hard the gears made a sound I've never heard before and hoped to God I never hear again. The tires screeched, the car fishtailed. I spun the wheel to turn around, heart pounding so hard it hurt, and then my headlights hit the road behind me, 2 more of them, standing dead center just like the first one. Same slack arms, same blank skin, same slit mouths, and the second the light touched them, they moved. Not walked, ran, but the way they ran wasn't human. Too fast, too stiff, like someone was yanking them forward on tangled strings. I floored it, swerving so close to the first one that I swear I could have reached out the window and touched its shoulder. I glanced in the mirror. They were chasing me, all 3. And no matter how fast I went, every time I looked back, they were closer than they should have been. I don't even know how long I drove. I just know the road kept twisting tighter and tighter, like it was trying to knot itself around me. My phone sat dead on the passenger seat, GPS frozen like it had given up on me. That's when I saw another sign. Same messy white letters on another board nailed to a tree. Turn A around now. I almost laughed, like I had a choice. For 10 more minutes it was just curves, curves, curves. No figures in the mirror anymore, which somehow made it worse. If they weren't behind me, where were they? Then the road ended. 1 second I was tearing around a bend. The next, my headlights hit a rusted metal gate blocking the way. Beyond it, woods. Nothing else. The gate was locked with a chain thick as my arm. I hit the brakes so hard the car fishtailed. My seatbelt dug into my chest. I whipped my head toward the rear view. Empty road, completely empty, like nothing had ever been there. I don't remember turning around. I just remember the next thing. The sudden shock of being back on a paved highway under a green exit sign for a town I didn't know. My GPS lit up like nothing happened, calm as ever. Continue for 12 miles. Sure, no problem. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. I pulled into the first gas station I saw and locked the doors. Sat there for half an hour, chest heaving like I'd just run a marathon. When I finally went inside to buy water, the clerk gave me a look. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. I laughed. It came out more like a choke, something like that. When I told him I'd been on Hollow Ridge, his expression dropped flat. "You took Hollow Ridge?" he said, like that explained everything. "Yeah," I said. "What's the deal with it?" He didn't answer, just shook his head and muttered, "People don't drive there at night." My shift at the diner ended a little after midnight. Normally I'd make it just in time to catch the last bus, but I got stuck scrubbing out the fryer. That thing was like a crime scene. By the time I finished and clocked out, the bus was long gone. That left me with two options: crash in the storeroom or walk, and honestly, the storeroom isn't exactly cozy. Fluorescent lights, boxes of ketchup packets, and a mop bucket that smells like old pickles. No thanks. So I decided to walk. I've never been good at staying put anyway. Home's not exactly around the corner. It's 2 towns over. Normally, I wouldn't even consider it. But there's this old road that cuts through the ridge, and if you take it, it shaves off an hour and a half. It's called Briar Hollow. People around here talk about it like it's haunted. When I was a kid, my mom used to warn me, don't whistle if you walk through Briar Hollow. Don't answer if something whistles back. She'd say it real serious, like she was warning me about touching the stove. I always thought it was one of those things parents make up to keep kids from wandering too far. You know, the stranger danger version of a bedtime story. But standing outside the diner, staring at that empty street, I didn't care about old stories. I just wanted to get home and sleep in my own bed. So I started walking. Briar Hollow in the daytime? It's nothing. A cracked, winding road with weeds creeping up through the asphalt and trees pressing in from both sides. At night, different story. No glow from houses, no porch lights, nothing, just the road. And you. I jammed my hands in my jacket pockets and started down the slope, breath fogging in front of me. It was colder than I expected. The kind of cold that makes your fingers ache if you pull your hands out too long. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Out there, you expect some kind of noise. A cricket, wind in the leaves, something. But it was dead silent. Just the crunch of my boots on gravel and my own breathing. About halfway through, it happened. A whistle. 2 notes, clear as glass. I stopped like I'd walked into a wall. At first, I told myself it was the wind. Had to be, right? But wind doesn't hit 2 perfect notes like that. It sounded intentional. Like someone was standing just out of sight, waiting for me to notice. I turned around. The road behind me was empty. No cars, no glow from headlights, nothing. I pulled out my phone screen, lit up blue against the dark. Of course, no signal. Because why would there be? So I kept walking. A little faster this time, telling myself it was nothing. Maybe some drunk guy messing around. Maybe a hunter. Guys like that love scaring people. Then I heard it again. Same 2 notes, same pitch. This time closer. I spun around so fast my neck popped. Nothing. Just the same stretch of black road, and the dark pressing in on both sides. My stomach knotted. All those stories I'd laughed at in high school started creeping back in. The thing about Briar Hollow, people say the whistle doesn't stop until you answer. I didn't plan on finding out. I kept moving, fast, not running, because for some reason that felt like the worst thing I could do. But fast enough that my steps sounded too loud in the silence. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Then, it came again. 2 notes, definitely closer. That was when my body betrayed me. My legs wanted to run so bad I could feel them twitching. But that warning, don't run, don't let it chase you, crawled up from the back of my brain and held me in place. So I forced myself to walk, quick, steady. Every muscle tight, every nerve screaming. The trees leaned in on both sides, branches knotted overhead like fingers lacing shut. My phone's flashlight shook in my hand, making the shadows jump like they were alive, and that's when I saw it. Between the trees, maybe 30 feet off the road, something pale, a face. At least I think it was a face. White, too white, too white, like paper stretched over bone. Its mouth was open in this grin that didn't belong to anything living. Too wide, too many teeth. And then it was gone, slipping back behind the trees like water draining away. My throat locked up so hard I couldn't even swallow. My legs moved on their own now. Faster, 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 and then the whistle, right behind me. I whipped around so hard the flashlight almost flew out of my hand. Nothing on the road, nothing anywhere. But then, like an echo that wasn't an echo, I heard it again. Ahead of me this time. 2 notes, sweet, almost gentle, like someone humming through their teeth, one behind me, one in front. That broke something in me. I ran, I didn't even think. I just took off. tearing through the dark like the world was on fire. I went off the road, scrambling up the slope where the trees were thicker. Branches whipped my arms, ripped my jacket open, but I didn't care. Dirt slid under my boots, roots grabbed at my ankles, but I kept going. Every few steps I'd hear it again. That whistle. Closer every time. I didn't look back. Couldn't. My eyes locked on the glint of a guardrail up ahead. The highway. Safety. When my hand slammed into that cold metal, I nearly sobbed. I hauled myself over and collapsed on the asphalt. Chest heaving. Lungs burning like fire. That's when headlights swung around the bend, flooding the road in white. For a second, I thought I was safe. Until I saw it. It was standing at the tree line across the highway. Tall. Too tall. Its limbs bent wrong, like it had borrowed someone else's body and didn't know how to use it. Its head tilted to one side just a little too far, like its neck didn't have bones. That grin was still there, stretched so wide I could see black gaps between teeth, and its cheeks, God, its cheeks bulged like something was stuffed inside. The headlights washed over it for 1 second, long enough for me to see the black liquid leaking from its mouth, dripping slow down its chin. Then the car passed, and it vanished like smoke. I didn't wait. I flagged down the next truck I saw, yanked the door open before the driver even stopped, and didn't breathe until Briar Hollow was just a smear of trees in the rear view. Back then, I was working second shift at this old lumber mill, just outside a tiny Appalachian town. The locals had rules. They weren't written down anywhere, but everybody knew them. Things like, don't wander ridge roads after dark, don't whistle past the holler, and never ever answer a voice if you can't see who's calling. I grew up hearing that stuff, same as everyone else. But honestly, it just sounded like leftover campfire stories to me. Rules to keep kids from wandering into the woods and breaking their necks on a cliff. Nothing more. That night started like any other. My shift wrapped up a little after 11. Most folks cleared out quick because that's what you do when it's late and the woods feel heavier than they should. But I stuck around, shooting the breeze with Boone, one of the old guys at the mill. Boone was a character, the kind of guy who carried stories the way other folks carried chewing tobacco, always ready to spit one out. He told them with a straight face too, never smiling. Made you think either he was the best liar on earth, or he believed every damn word. "You taking the Ridge Road tonight?" he asked, leaning against a stack of pallets like he had all the time in the world. "Yeah," I said, shrugging into my jacket. "Why?" He just stared for a second, chewing the inside of his cheek. Then he said, "Don't stop for voices. You hear me? You hear somebody call your name and you can't see him? Don't stop. Don't even think about it." I laughed, because what else do you do when someone says something like that? "Boone, you're making it sound like the woods are haunted." His face didn't move, not even a twitch. "They ain't haunted," he said finally. "They're worse. Things out there, they know what you want to hear. That's how they get you." I remember just standing there, my smile slipping a little. The way he said it, it didn't sound like a joke, but I didn't argue. I just told him good night and headed out. The parking lot was empty except for my truck. The air smelled like wet bark, heavy and damp enough to cling to your clothes. My boots crunched on the gravel as I climbed in, slammed the door, and fired up the engine. The radio came on low. For half a second I considered turning it off, because the quiet felt safer. The long way home was 30 minutes. The Ridge Road cut that in half. I'd been up since 5 in the morning, and every muscle in my body wanted to collapse into bed. So yeah, I took the shortcut. That Ridge Road is the kind of place that makes you believe in nothing and everything all at once. A strip of cracked asphalt twisting through black trees. No lights, no houses, no guardrails. Just you and the void outside your headlights. The kind of dark where, if your engine cut out, you'd hear your own heartbeat louder than anything else. I'd been driving maybe 10 miles when I saw it, something pale on the shoulder. At first I thought, deer. Then it stood up. A girl. Couldn't have been older than 13, barefoot. Wearing a pale dress that clung like it had soaked up a gallon of rain. Her arms hung at her sides like dead weight. Her head tilted down, stringy wet hair hiding most of her face. I slowed down, rolled the window down a few inches. "You okay?" "Nothing." She didn't move, didn't even twitch. "You hurt?" I asked, because what else do you say? That's when she moved. Slow, so slow it made my stomach tighten. She turned her head toward me. Her face looked pale under the headlights. Lips cracked gray like old plaster. Her eyes, something was wrong with them. I couldn't even tell you what exactly, just that every part of me wanted to stop looking. I thought about Boone, about what he'd said, but leaving a kid out here, that felt like something I'd never sleep right with. "You need a ride?" She nodded once, just once, no blink, no sound, just a slow, stiff nod. I popped the passenger door. The second she slid in, the cab felt smaller, like the air got heavier. She sat perfect and still, hands folded neat in her lap, staring straight ahead. The dash light made her skin look gray, stretched tight at the wrists, like it didn't quite belong. "What's your name?" I asked, because silence was worse. Her head tilted toward me a fraction. She whispered something I didn't catch. "What?" This time I heard it. One word, soft and flat, like it didn't know how to belong in the air. Arlen, my name. Every hair on my body stood up. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. "How do you know my name?" She turned her head slow as rust until her face was almost touching mine. Her mouth opened too wide, stretching at the corners. "Arlen." Same dead whisper, same tone, like something learning a word it didn't understand. That's when I saw her hands. They weren't right. Too long. Fingers curling into hooked points. Her skin hung loose, sliding when she moved, like it wasn't attached underneath. I slammed the brakes so hard my seatbelt punched me in the chest. She pitched forward with a sound that wasn't a scream, just air rushing through something hollow. Before the truck even stopped, I was out the door, hitting the ground running. Gravel shredded my knees, but I didn't care. I ran into the trees, branches ripping at my arms, lungs on fire, and still I didn't stop. Behind me, the truck door slammed, then nothing, no footsteps, no breathing, just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. I didn't look back. Couldn't. I ran until I saw porch lights blinking through the trees like stars. I sprinted to the first house and beat on the door until a man opened it, holding a shotgun and looking like he'd just crawled out of bed. I tried to explain. The words wouldn't come out right. He called the sheriff anyway. They found my truck still running, sitting in the middle of the ridge road, passenger door hanging open. No footprints but mine. The sheriff asked if I'd been drinking. I told him no. He asked if I was tired. I told him yes. He nodded like that explained everything. I quit the mill the next day. People around here like to talk about the mountains like they're alive. Not just alive as in full of life. Alive in a way that listens, that remembers. You grow up hearing lines from the old timers. Things like, "The trees don't forget," or "Some places don't want you there." They never sound like they're joking, even when they laugh after. And then come the rules, spoken casual, like they don't matter. Don't whistle after dark. Don't call your own name in the woods. And if you hear something calling you, don't answer. I'd heard it all 100 times. Never believed a word of it. That November, I decided to spend a weekend alone at my family's hunting cabin. I wanted to disconnect for a couple of days. No cell service, no social media, no neighbor's dog barking at shadows, just quiet. The cabin's been in the family since my grandfather built it, tucked so far back in the Appalachian hills you can't even drive to it. The last stretch is 3 miles on foot. I'd been there plenty of times before, but never alone. That was the point. The hike in didn't feel like I remembered. I don't know if it was the time of year or me being out of shape, but the trail felt steeper, and the leaves were slick underfoot. Half-rotted, soft, sucking at my boots. The trees leaned in on both sides, like they were trying to shut me out. Branches overhead looked like knuckles twisting together. I caught myself checking behind me more than once, unsure if I'd hear someone following. By the time I hit the clearing, the sun was gone behind the ridges. That quick. The light drains faster out there, like someone's pulling it with a plug. The shadows were long, stretching across the clearing like they'd been waiting for me. The cabin looked smaller than it used to, squatter, like it had sunk a little over the years. Or maybe I just remembered it bigger, because I was a kid the last time I'd stayed overnight. The porch sagged in the middle like it was tired. The door fought me when I pushed it open, making this long groan that sounded almost like a voice, which didn't help the mood. Inside, the air was stale and cold in that way that makes your nose sting. Dust hung in the air like powder. Everything was exactly as my grandfather left it. The iron stove crouched in the corner. The table scarred from years of knives and coffee mugs. The shelves lined with jars. I remembered those jars. Couldn't forget them really, some filled with cloudy liquid, like something pickled. Others holding feathers tied with string. Little bones, polished smooth. Teeth tiny ones, not big enough for a person, but bigger than a squirrel's. As a kid, I thought he was just weird, some old mountain superstition thing. He told me once they were wards, said they kept things out. I never asked what things. Honestly, I didn't want to know. I set my bag down and started a fire. The wood popped, throwing sparks like it was mad about being burned. The warmth crawled in slow, peeling frost off the walls. I stretched my hands out like a pilgrim seeing light for the first time. But even with the fire crackling, the quiet in that cabin felt wrong. Heavy, like you're underwater and your ears are stuffed. That kind of quiet makes you start talking to yourself just to hear a voice. I brought a little weed to take the edge off because, why not? Rolled one. Sat in the old rocker by the window and stared into the black outside. First drag hit smooth, settled deep. Between the fire and the smoke, my shoulders finally loosened up. That's when I noticed the taste. Bitter, metallic, like chewing on a coin. My tongue felt thick, but I figured maybe it was just the strain. I was still thinking about that when I heard it, a whistle. Long, low, low. It slipped through the trees, thin and sharp. Like it didn't care if you heard it or not. Just steady. I froze. Didn't even breathe for a second. It came again, closer this time, curling through the trees like smoke. My brain clawed for something normal. Some late hunter heading out, maybe a lost hiker. But then my grandfather's voice came back, clear as if he was sitting right behind me. If you hear whistling in the dark, don't answer, and don't look out the window. That memory didn't make me feel better. I stared at the floorboards, lungs locked up. The whistle faded into a hum. Low, broken, like whoever it was didn't know the tune, just pushing sound out of their throat. It circled the cabin. Slow, not rushing, not lost. Then it spoke. Cold out here. A man's voice, right outside the wall. I gripped the chair arm so hard my fingers ached. The fire popped behind me like a gunshot. I wanted so badly to believe it was just a normal person. But the words didn't sound right. Too flat, like someone reading lines they'd been given. You got a fire going. Closer now. Just beyond the door. Every hair on my body stood up. I glanced at the shelves. And that's when I saw it. One of the jars was gone. Just an empty spot where it should have been. I hadn't touched them. At least, I didn't think I had. The voice came again, softer now. Almost coaxing. Let me warm up, just for a minute. Something brushed the door, slow, dragging like fingertips. The knob twitched once, twice, then started to turn. My heart slammed so hard I thought my ribs would snap. My grandfather's voice hit me again like a slap. Don't answer. Don't open the door. The latch held, but the knob kept working. Slow, deliberate. Like whoever was out there didn't understand why it wouldn't open. Then it stopped. For a long minute, nothing, just me, the fire popping, and my breath sounding like a storm. I thought maybe it was gone. I was wrong. The footsteps started, soft at first, then crunching through leaves as they circled the cabin. One loop, two, three, then silence. When the voice came back, it wasn't at the door. It was behind me, at the window. Why'd you move my jar? Everything in me froze solid. I didn't look. Couldn't. The air on my neck turned cold and heavy, like something was leaning close without breathing. The fire cracked and spat like it was panicking too. I grabbed my bag and bolted. Didn't think. Didn't check the door. Just launched for the window. It screeched when I shoved it up, the frame clawing at my jacket as I climbed out. Cold hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I ran blind into the trees, branches clawing at my face, the dark pressing in so thick it felt like running underwater. Behind me, the voice followed, not shouting, just drifting, almost lazy. Don't run. It's worse when you run. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs buckled. By the time the sky started turning gray, I was miles down the trail, on my knees in the dead leaves, sobbing like a kid. When I finally reached my car, my hands were raw and bleeding, my knees torn up. I drove without looking in the rearview mirror, couldn't risk it. When I told someone later, they just stared and said what people always say, you were high, you imagined it. My cousin Evan had been bugging me for months about coming out there, saying I needed to unplug for a while. According to him, this cabin was the ultimate reset button. No signal, no neighbors, no traffic, just peace and quiet. It sounded fine at the time. A couple of days off-grid, sure. What could go wrong? The drive from home was almost 6 hours, though it felt longer. The road seemed to shrink the deeper we went. First pavement, then gravel, then dirt. After a while, it didn't even feel like a road anymore. Just two muddy tracks that looked like someone dragged a wagon through 100 years ago. I remember thinking, if the car breaks down out here, we're dead. Then the cabin came into view, and I stopped wondering. I just stared. I didn't know what I was expecting, but not this. It looked ancient. Not rustic charm old, but decaying wood and sagging porch old. 2 stories of gray, weather-beaten timber leaning to one side, with a roof patched together by rusted metal. The whole thing looked like it was clinging to life. Behind it, the forest rose like a wall of trees. No gaps, no end, just endless green and shadow. Evan hopped out of the truck grinning like this was a 5-star resort. "Perfect, right?" he said. "Perfect," I answered, though my tone probably gave me away. He wasn't lying about the signal. My phone was a dead brick, no bars, nothing. The quiet was heavier than I expected too. You know, that kind of silence that's supposed to feel peaceful? This didn't. It felt like the whole world had gone on pause. The first night was fine. We made a fire, burned through half the snacks we brought, stayed up late talking. Normal. I was almost convinced the trip wouldn't be that bad. Then the next morning, over coffee, Evan dropped it on me. "You ever hear of the Stitcher?" he asked, casual, like he was asking if I wanted more sugar. I laughed because it sounded ridiculous. "What, like some Appalachian boogeyman?" "Not exactly," he said with a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "People around here say if you ever find something tied up with red thread in the woods, you leave it alone, and then you go home." That was the whole explanation. I waited for a punchline, but he just sipped his coffee. When I pressed him for why, he just shrugged. Superstition, I guess. I didn't think about it again until later. That afternoon, we hiked about 3 miles in. The trail started decent, but the deeper we went, the narrower it got. Eventually, it was just a deer path winding through brush. At one point, we stopped for a break, and I wandered a little off trail. That's when I saw it. Hanging from a low branch was a small figure made of sticks, roughly shaped like a person, tied together with bright red thread. The knots weren't random. They were neat, almost artistic. Whoever made it took their time. "Hey, check this out," I called. Evan came over, and the second he saw it, everything about him changed. His smile just dropped. "Don't touch that," he said. His tone was sharp way, too sharp for something that was supposed to be a joke. "Why?" "It's just sticks," I said. "Just don't." Then he softened, like he realized how he sounded. "Seriously, leave it." I didn't argue. Something about the way he kept glancing over his shoulder made my skin crawl. We turned around and headed back. No more hiking that day. By the time the sun started going down, Evan had locked every door and window in the cabin. That's when I asked him what his deal was. He didn't even look at me when he said it. People say the Stitcher leaves those things. If you mess with them, or even get too close, he knows. And once he knows, he follows you home. I laughed. I had to, because the alternative was too weird. But Evan didn't laugh, didn't even smirk. We went to bed early that night. I was upstairs lying in this creaky bed staring at the ceiling. No sound from outside. Not a bird, not a bug, just nothing. Then I heard it. At first I thought it was windsoft and irregular, but there'd been no wind all day. The air was dead still. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 quick taps against the siding. Pause. Then 3 more. I sat up, holding my breath. Tap, tap, tap. I walked to the window, moved the curtain just enough to peek outside. The trees were just black shapes, motionless. Then my eyes dropped to the porch below, and my stomach turned to stone. Something was hanging from the railing, swaying gently, like it had just been placed there. I grabbed my phone, flicked on the flashlight, and aimed it down through the glass. It was another bundle, bigger this time, wrapped in red thread. Only now the thread was darker, wet. The knots glistened like they'd been soaked in something thick. Before I could move, before I could even breathe, a sound came from the far corner of the room. A breath. Slow, steady. In and out, like someone trying not to be heard. I didn't turn my head. I didn't look. I bolted. I tore out of that room so fast the floor shook. Flew down the stairs, nearly slamming into Evan. He was fully dressed, jacket zipped like he'd been about to leave. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "We're going," he said, voice shaking. "Now?" "Now." We didn't pack. We didn't turn off the lights. We just ran to the truck and floored it down that dirt road so hard the tires spun in the mud. The forest swallowed us whole. The headlights barely cut through the dark. My hands were clenched so tight on the seatbelt my nails left marks. Then Evan slammed the brakes so hard I hit the dash. Up ahead, standing in the middle of the road, was something. Tall, thin. Its head tilted slightly, like it was listening. Its arms hung at its sides, and in one hand it held a length of red thread that dragged along the dirt, leaving a faint line behind it. We stared. Neither of us spoke. Then Evan threw the truck in reverse so hard I thought the transmission would explode. He didn't stop until we hit a bend wide enough to turn around. Then we were flying the other way, trees whipping past like black blades. We didn't speak again until we saw the glow of a gas station 2 towns over. Evan sold the cabin a month later. We've never talked about it since. About 3 years ago, I decided to go looking for this abandoned fire tower in the Appalachian backcountry. A friend swore it was the perfect spot for photos. Remote, untouched, and high enough to catch the last bit of fall colors before the leaves dropped. He'd been up there once, apparently, and described it like some kind of hidden treasure. His exact words were, "Dude, you'll thank me when you see the view." He sent me directions as a screenshot because, as he put it, "Don't count on your phone out there." That should have been a red flag. But at the time, it just felt like an adventure. I left mid-morning thinking I'd hit the trail around lunch, maybe spend an hour or two hiking, get some good shots, and be back before dark. Easy. Except the roads out there don't really believe in straight lines. They twist and loop like they're trying to confuse you on purpose. Every mile took me deeper into hills that looked like they'd been forgotten by time. Every sign I passed was older than the last. Paint bleached pale, letters ghosted to nothing. Some didn't even bother trying. Just warped boards nailed to a post, pointing in a direction like that was enough. By the time my GPS gave up and the little blue dot froze mid-turn, the sun had already started dragging shadows down the ridges. Then the pavement ended. No warning. No sign saying, "Road ends." 1 second tires humming on blacktop, the next they were crunching gravel. I kept going, because honestly, what else was I gonna do? The road wasn't really a road anymore. No lines, no reflectors. Just a strip of dirt curling deeper into trees that leaned over like they were eavesdropping. Daylight thinned until it was this weird gray-green like being underwater. I checked my phone. 0 bars. That's when I remembered my friend's text. Follow the old mining road until you see the mailbox with a blue handprint. Turn there. Sounded simple enough, except that road stretched on way longer than I expected. For the first time, I wondered if he'd been messing with me. Then I saw it. A mailbox slumped on a crooked post like it was too tired to stand. The metal was so rusted it looked diseased. Across the front, a pale smear of color. Maybe blue once, but so faded it was basically gray. At first glance, it looked like a handprint. Wide, uneven, the fingers stretched too far apart. But the more I stared, the less it looked like a print and more like a drag mark. Like someone pressed their hand down and slid it sideways. I sat there for a good 30 seconds, engine idling, just staring. My brain tried to make it normal, kids goofing off with paint maybe, but something about it felt off, like the shape didn't belong. Still, I turned down the road behind it, because of course I did. This wasn't a road so much as a tunnel chewed through the woods. The trees were so tight the branches clawed at my car. The farther I went, the darker it got. After a mile, it opened into a clearing where a shack leaned like it had given up years ago. From the car, I thought it had collapsed. But no, it was upright, just rotting in slow motion. I stepped out, stretched my back, and that's when I realized what was wrong. No sound, not quiet, absent, no birds, no wind. Not even the faint tick of leaves shifting. Just the crunch of frost-burned weeds under my boots and my own breath, loud enough to feel embarrassing. The shack was worse up close. The windows weren't broken, they were boarded from the inside, and the walls, God, the walls were chewed up. Deep grooves cut into the wood, over and over, overlapping like scars. At first, I thought initials, maybe bored kids with knives. But the cuts didn't make sense, too chaotic, too desperate. Then I saw it. At the bottom, slicing through all the others, one word, fresh and pale where the blade had bitten. T-U-R and A-round. I laughed, out loud. The sound came out flat and wrong, like it didn't belong to me. Probably some local trying to spook hikers. Or maybe a warning for trespassers. Either way, I wasn't planning to touch the shack, I just needed the trailhead. And according to the screenshot, it started right behind it. And sure enough, there it was. A narrow track smothered in dead leaves, barely wide enough to call a path. I started up. The climb hit harder than I expected. The trail zigzagged in tight switchbacks that felt endless. 10 minutes in, the shack was gone, and the trees had swallowed everything behind me. That's when the silence started to feel heavy. My breathing got loud, echoing in my head. Every crunch of leaves under my boots sounded amplified, like the woods were listening. Then, faint but steady, another rhythm slipped in. Soft, delayed. Like something was pacing me, far enough back it didn't care if I heard. I froze, held my breath. Nothing. I told myself it was an echo, or a deer. Had to be. Kept walking. 5 minutes later I saw them. Footprints. At first I thought they were mine, doubled back from a switchback, but no. They were too big, too wide, and barefoot. Each print pressed deep into the mud where the leaves thinned. Toes splayed in a way that made my stomach twist. They weren't there before. The prints walked beside mine for maybe 20 feet, then slipped off into the brush like something had just stepped away. I stood there too long, scanning the trees until my chest locked up. I don't know why I didn't turn back. Pride? Stupidity? Or maybe because explaining to my friend that I bailed over some weird mud marks felt worse than pushing forward. So I went on, faster now. And then the trees cracked open, and there it was, the fire tower. It rose from the clearing like a skeleton made of rust. The ladder bolted straight up its spine, leading to a platform barely big enough for one person. For some reason, seeing it calmed me. Something solid, something real after all that nothing. I crossed the clearing fast and grabbed the first rung. The metal burned cold. I started climbing, counting rungs like a prayer. 10 feet, 15, then movement flickered below. I froze. Fingers clenched so tight rust bit into my skin. At the tree line, where the trail dissolved into shadow, something stood. Too far for detail, but wrong in every way. Too thin. Its head cocked back like its neck wasn't built for the weight. Arms hanging too long at its sides. It didn't move, but I knew it was looking at me. I climbed faster, heart kicking my ribs, eyes locked on the platform. When I swung over the edge, I didn't look down, not until I had to. The clearing was empty, then metal sang under me, a hollow clang sharp enough to slice the silence. The ladder, one bar, then another, slow, deliberate. I didn't think, didn't breathe. I swung my legs over, gripped the rails, and slid. Rust shredded my palms raw. My boots hit dirt so hard my knees almost buckled, but I didn't stop. The clearing was still empty. I ran, not for the trail, for the trees. I crashed through branches and briars, lungs tearing until the woods spat me out onto the dirt road. My car waited, door hanging open like I'd never closed it. When I turned the key, the headlights washed across the mailbox. That pale handprint glowed like bone. I checked the rear view once. Something stood at the edge of the trees, half hidden in shadow, still too tall. Head still tilted, one arm raised in a slow, broken wave. I didn't look again. I drove until the dirt became blacktop.